And before it like collapsed into the ground, you can see like 10 or so people sprinting away because they jumped from the windows on the other side.
Welcome to Curious World History. I am Colleen.
And I'm Albert.
We are very excited about today's episode.
Yeah.
Because this has been an event that was very interesting to Albert at a very young age. Do you remember?
No.
So when you were about 3 years old, Uncle Dave, Uncle Smuda, taught you how to use the turntable, the record player in our house. And that record player, we had a record from your grandparents that had old radio recordings on it, including the account of the Hindenburg, which we're going to talk about that account because that was pretty special. But you've been interested in it since then, which is 8 years. So that's a long time.
Yeah.
So why don't you tell me what you learned about the Hindenburg? So first of all, the Hindenburg is an airship.
Yeah, a Zeppelin.
A Zeppelin. So did you know why it's called a Zeppelin?
No.
It was the name of the inventor. That was his last name.
Oh,
That's pretty common, right?
Yeah.
People usually name things after themselves.
Yeah.
So I've also heard it called a different thing.
An airship?
An airship?
Or a blimp.
A blimp, that's right. A blimp is what we typically call them today, right? Okay, so what else can you tell me about the ship itself?
It was named after a former German president.
That's right. So there was a president who had died, I believe it was in 1934. Did you know that originally those airships were used in World War I for bombings?
Yeah.
Isn't that wild? Could you imagine that? And they were also called dirigibles, right? This is one of the things that I think has more names for this one thing than I've seen. So, and they were starting to become popular for what other reason?
For passenger travel.
That's right, passenger travel. Now, this was when airplanes were still pretty young, right? It was early.
And it was safer to fly a Zeppelin or blimp.
For a group of passengers, right? Yeah, as a matter of fact, I was reading that back then, compared to planes, there was a plane called the Lockheed Super Electra. And the Lockheed Electra was a name I recognized because a famous person flew one of those. Do you remember who that was?
No.
A famous woman, and she disappeared.
Amelia Earhart?
That's right. She flew a Lockheed Electra. So just to give you a sense, a Lockheed Super Electra could fly up to 14 passengers, but it didn't do super long trips because they didn't have enough gas. That's why actually she had removed all the seats and everything and put big gas tanks in, right? Yeah. And the Boeing was starting to develop larger planes. Like they were almost like flying boats, essentially. I think they were even called that. So it was really new. So this particular Hindenburg, how many people did this one have on board?
97 passengers.
That's right. And so, 97 people on board. So how many passengers and how many crew?
36 passengers and 61 crew.
That's right. So I thought that was interesting because there were way more crew than there were passengers, which today, if you get on an airplane, you have
like 3 crew members.
Yeah, that's right. 3 crew members plus the pilot and maybe a co-pilot, could be a navigational officer, right? So you're talking really like 6 to 7 people on a lot of the flights we've been on compared to hundreds of passengers. So I thought that was pretty interesting.
Yeah.
Also, can you describe like what the inside of this airship was like?
It was like really like pretty. It was like furnished.
Yes, well furnished. It was like a luxury travel thing, right? So what I saw is that it had 2 passenger decks, right? So it was like 2 floors. That there were sleeping cabins. That there was a dining room, a lounge, a promenade, which was the viewing area. It had like windows that sort of
they were slanted, so you could see down below.
That's right. And this ship flew pretty low because like today when you and I get in an airplane, we're typically cruising at 30 to 40,000 feet, somewhere in that range, right? But these would cruise anywhere between like 650 to 2,000 feet. So you could actually probably see people, from that distance, right? You can see all the buildings. You could see you were close. It was like traveling in a hot air balloon today.
Yeah.
But with way more control and a whole heck of a lot more space. This particular ship also had a smoking room and a bar. The smoking room part shocked me. Do you know why?
Because now you can't smoke on planes.
That's one excellent reason. I'm really glad for that because I'm not a smoker, and I remember when you could smoke anywhere and it just stank.
And also, you couldn't bring anything flammable on board.
Right. So I was thinking to myself, if you can't bring flammable stuff on board, and we'll get into why in a second. How do you smoke? So this is something interesting I learned. This had a pressurized smoking cabin. In other words, they pumped a certain kind of air into this room so that even if there were a hydrogen leak, the leak would stay out of the room. So it was a special locked room. In order to get out or get in, someone had to let you out or in, and so it would keep the pressure in there. So I thought that was really interesting. I also read that the cabins themselves, the sleeping cabins, because this particular trip they were on and several of the trips that the Hindenburg did, they took several days, right? Yeah. So you had to sleep on there. The sleeping cabins were about the size of railroad sleeper cars.
Oh,
so not
too big.
Not too big, not too small. Somewhere it's kind of like bunk beds and stuff like that. Of course, the crew accommodations, I'm sure, were less fancy. They probably had them really stacked in together. But this sort of gives you a sense of what this was like. There had actually even been a special piano they had designed specifically for the Hindenburg. Lightweight, because normally pianos are super heavy.
Yeah, and if it's too heavy, it can't get off the ground.
That's right. They had to be really judicious. Do you know what that means?
No.
It means really use stuff well. Make sure that you're being efficient with the use of it. They had to be really judicious with the weight. So they had designed a special piano that was made out of aluminum, which is a lightweight metal. And then it was covered in pigskin to kind of give it the look. I know. But do you know what else used to be covered in pigskin? Might still be?
Football.
Yeah. The old football, the American football. As a matter of fact, they still call it the pigskin sometimes because it used to be covered in pigskin. So anyways, this gives you a sense of what this place was like. It was so special. But on this particular flight, this season, because this actual airship had been around the year before. For this season, they had removed the piano. So I don't know if they decided they needed that space for something else.
Okay.
So flights were pretty expensive. Do you know?
$450.
Back then, right?
Yeah, but now it's like $10,000.
Which is a huge amount of money.
Yeah.
That's unbelievable.
Like an economy ticket is...
right today? Well, depending on where you're flying. So from the distance they were going, it's probably about $450 for an economy ticket to go to the place they were flying from. Do you want to talk about where that was?
They were from Germany.
That's right, Frankfurt, Germany.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Is there anything else you'd like to tell me about this particular airship?
The construction and design?
Yeah, tell me about that.
Okay, so the location of it being built was Frankfurt, Germany.
Yep, that makes sense.
So for the materials, there's aluminum.
Is that for the rigid part of it? Okay.
And the framework.
Yeah.
A duralumin.
Yeah, duraluminum, which is kind of an aluminum alloy, right? And then what else?
The gas cells. They were made of gold beater's skin.
Gold beater's skin. That's interesting. It's made from ox intestines.
Ew.
Yeah, I know. But I bet you it was pretty darn durable, right?
Yeah.
So that's amazing. And it said also that those were incredibly lightweight and they were airtight. So that's important. Yeah. So then tell me about the outer covering. What was that made of?
Cotton fabric coated with dope.
Oh, okay. So it was doped. Which that's a chemical that's weather resistant, right?
Yeah.
But unfortunately, what also is that outer chemical?
It's flammable.
That's right. What does flammable mean?
It can catch fire really quickly.
That's right. So we have a problem here, right? Because we have this big airship. They don't want flammable things on it, probably because of that. But what was inside of the gas tanks, those skins that we were talking about? What kind of gas did they put in there?
hydrogen instead of helium.
That's right. So this was actually designed to be used with helium.
And they used helium. They did not use helium because America did not want to sell.
That's right. They didn't want to sell the helium to them, and the United States of America controlled the stores of helium.
Mm-hmm.
So they said no, they weren't going to sell them. Now there's a long history as to why at this point the U.S. didn't want to part with that helium and give it to the Germans, and some of that had to do with World War I.
Yeah,
and that this ship was being used for propaganda from the Nazi Party.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there's a long story about that, and you and I talked about it.
Yeah, but it's going to be too long.
It would take a really long time for us to dig into that story, and it's very complicated and pretty emotional because we know what the Nazis did later, right? I think for the purpose of this podcast, we're going to stick to this ship and this particular flight.
Yeah.
So, do you know why they were using either helium or hydrogen? How it works?
It lets it float.
That's right, because helium and hydrogen are both lighter than the air that we breathe, the air that we live in. As a matter of fact, we recently learned that carbon dioxide is the opposite. It's what?
It's heavier.
That's right. So when carbon dioxide would actually sink, helium and hydrogen float above. Mm-hmm. So they fill up those tanks with this, in this case, they use the hydrogen, right?
Yeah.
Which is also
flammable.
That's right. So we've got a flammable gas inside of a flammable ship.
Yeah, which is not very...
Seems a little dodgy.
Yeah.
Well, in
but
hindsight...
it made 36 flights, or 63 flights.
It made 63 flights safely.
Yeah.
Right? I think it might be time to talk about the final voyage of the Hindenburg.
Yeah. So it departed May 3rd, 1937, from Frankfurt, Germany, to Lakeshurst, New Jersey, USA.
That's right, Lakehurst.
Yeah.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
It has 36 passengers, 61 crew, and 97 were on board. And the captain was Max Purse.
That's right. Max Pruss would be my guess, although it's a German name, and I will tell you, I do not speak German.
Yeah.
So it's Pruss. So tell us about the journey.
So the Hindenburg departed from Frankfurt on its 18th transatlantic crossing.
Wow! Do you know what transatlantic means?
Past the water?
It goes over the Atlantic Ocean, yes.
Okay. And due to poor weather over the Atlantic and along the American East Coast, the voyage took longer than usual, nearly 3 days.
That's insane. So I don't know how long it was supposed to take, but I did read that they were at least 12 hours behind.
Yeah.
And when they started to get toward New Jersey, they realized there were passing storms coming through New Jersey. So they diverted, actually, and did a scenic tour through New York City. Mm-hmm. So that must have been kind of fun for people, right?
So the Zeppelin flew over the English Channel, Ireland, then out across the Atlantic Ocean, descending along the U.S. eastern seaboard, passing over Boston, New York City, and then heading towards Lakeshurst, New Jersey.
That's right. And then what happened?
And then approaching to Lakehurst, weather conditions at Lakehurst were poor, the thunderstorms delaying the landing. The Hindenburg circled the area for several hours.
Yeah.
Until the weather cleared enough to attempt a high mooring, a less common method where the ship would remain higher off the ground during docking. Around 7 p.m. on May 6th, the Hindenburg began its final approach.
So in the final approach, we've both seen video of this because this was in the early days of them capturing news video for newsreels. And do you know what those newsreels would be used for?
No.
It was pretty neat. Whenever people would go to the movie theater, before the movie started up, you know how we see previews of upcoming movies?
Yeah.
They might see previews of upcoming movies, but they would also see news of the world because televisions were not popular back then.
Yeah, they were expensive.
They were super expensive and probably pretty darn rare. So instead, people would gather around radios, which means they didn't get to see these things.
Yeah.
So there were newsreels that would play beforehand. And so that is why we actually have video of this today, is because somebody was there to film that.
Yeah, multiple people.
Multiple people, that's right.
Okay. Because of the early thunderstorms, the landing had been delayed for several hours. By 7 p.m., weather had cleared enough for a high mooring. The Zeppelin hovered about 200 feet in the air, releasing lines to the ground crew. And I heard that when it released those lines, once they touched the ground, there was a thunderstorm, so the electricity, the static, went up the line and caused Hindenburg to explode.
That's right. So, I read that part of the reason they think it exploded is there may have been a small leak in one of the hydrogen tanks. So now there's a buildup of hydrogen, right, which is flammable and combustible, which means it can explode. Then we've got static electricity building up on this airship, which means it's got a bunch of extra electrons. Those electrons want to move. They want to find ground. So they bring those wires down that someone is going to grab at the bottom, and that grounds the ship, which sends electricity to it, and boom!
Yeah. And also, before they moored, they dropped a few gallons of water.
That's right. Do you know why they did that?
To make it less heavy.
Yeah, that's right.
The fire. The fire spread terrifyingly fast. In about 30 to 40 seconds, the entire ship was engulfed. And there was and some people jumped.
Yes.
Before the Hindenburg went on the ground.
Yeah, because it was coming down fast now, right? Because the gas tanks that kept it aloft had burned up and exploded. The ship was burning up and exploding, and this whole fireball is coming to the ground, so people were trying to save themselves.
Yeah.
So, and what did it look like? You've seen this video.
So it looked like the back half first kind of caught on fire, and then the front half was on fire, but then the middle-ish section was still there, where the windows are, and you can see multiple people jumping out of there, and before it collapsed into the ground, you can see 10 or so people sprinting away because they jumped from the windows on the other side.
Okay, so they were trying like heck to get away from this fireball.
And once it collapsed, there's somebody who's still in it, and you can see them crawling out.
Yeah, so it's terrifying. So we've covered what happened during the crash.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about the media coverage of this? Because we talked about the fact that it was caught on video, which would be played later. There's no live broadcasting, right? Everything was recorded and played somewhere
and
later.
It was so hot, the flames reached temperatures over 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit or 1,093 degrees Celsius.
That's horrendous. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's horrendous.
Okay, so Herb Morrison, a radio journalist on site, delivered the famous emotional broadcast.
And what do you mean by emotional broadcast?
Like, he's crying and stuff.
Yeah, he was even hyperventilating.
Yeah, and we have this in the description, the video.
Yeah, so tell me what he says, because it's a famous line that he says.
So he says, it's crashing, oh, the humanity, which is a very famous line.
That's a very famous line. They've used it in all kinds of movies and cartoons and everything.
And all the passengers screaming around there.
It bursts into flames. Get it started. It's crashing terrible. Oh my, get out of the way, please. It's bursting into flames, and it's falling on the mooring mast and all the folks between it. This is terrible. This is one of the worst catastrophes in the world. Oh, it's like 400 or 500 feet into the sky, and it's a terrific crash, ladies and gentlemen. The smoke and the flames now, and the flame is crashing to the ground, not quite to the mooring mast. All the humanity and all the passengers screaming around it. I can't even talk to people. His friends are out there. I can't talk, ladies and gentlemen. Honest, it's just laying there a mass of smoking wreckage. and everybody can't hardly breathe and talk and screaming. Lady, I'm sorry. Honestly, I can hardly breathe. I'm going to step inside while I cannot see it. Charlie, that's terrible. Listen, folks, I'm going to have to stop for a minute because I've lost the voice. This is the worst thing I've ever witnessed.
So this poor man was there. He was sent from a radio station out of Chicago, an NBC radio station. I think it was called WLS in Chicago. Yeah. And he didn't go alone. I don't know if you know this. He was assigned the coverage, and he brought a sound engineer with him. Mm-hmm. The sound engineer's name was Charlie Nelson. So it's Herb Morrison and Charlie, and they brought 87 pounds of experimental recording equipment with them. So they were using a modified dictation machine. Yeah. So if you think about a dictation machine, it's just something you speak into, right? It's not there to record.
But there was recording of...
That's right. So it caught the sound around them because the sound was so loud. So if you've ever seen a record player, and you know these very well, it's this big disc, right?
Yeah, we have it.
We have a record player right next to where we are. And these discs are like big plastic discs. Well, when you're listening to a record, there's a needle called a stylus, and it goes on the grooves, and it makes the noise. This one had a needle or stylus that was cutting grooves into something like wax. So there's this big wax disc that they're cutting. Now, when the blast happened, thank goodness Charlie was paying attention, the sound engineer, because the blast actually knocked the needle, caused the needle to bounce, which means they weren't capturing much of a recording. So he got it under control. And that's why we hear Herb screaming, "Oh, the humanity." That's why we can hear him crying and hyperventilating, is because Charlie got that under control.
And the blast was really powerful, so the recording got cut out, there's a cut, and in the video, it's there's a big cut, or it's a few seconds, but when it goes back, there's only 10 seconds until it hits the ground.
That's right.
At most.
So I think the blast even affected that poor the guy who was filming it for video. And they were saying that he was having some technical difficulty. But what's very interesting is that at that time, nobody used recorded sounds for broadcasts. They were always read by a local broadcaster. So someone in Chicago would just read what was happening, an account that was sent to him. In this case, they decided to break their own rule at NBC, and they played the recording for people. Mm-hmm. And that changed the way that people listen to the news, because now, whenever you and I watch the news, it's someone on site, and they're talking about and they're showing us. So I think this was an emotional thing that changed how people felt about the news. What was really interesting is those guys didn't just record the sound. They also went and helped passengers in between. So it was the kind of thing where they would go and try to help, then they would come back and record, then they would go and try to help and come back and record. Charlie and Herb would remain friends for the rest of their lives. They would keep in touch for the rest of their lives. Okay. And I read that historian Anna Acetola recognizes the disaster as a poignant moment in the evolution of media reporting. And just so you know, the disc and recording are part of the National Archives, and they're part of the public domain. So that's why we're able to play it on our podcast here. So do we want to go into the outcome?
Okay.
How many people died?
So there were 97 people on board, 35 died, 13 passengers and 22 crew, and 62 people survived. Some jumped, others escaped from the wreckage. Also, one member of the ground crew was killed. That's
right. I wonder if he was probably underneath.
Yeah.
Did you know that that there was also mail on the ship? So part of how they paid for their flights was to deliver mail as well. Now, some of that mail was real mail that had to get from point A to point B. Some of it was just mail that was meant to be a memento. So it was stamped with the Hindenburg. It was all about the Hindenburg, right? So it was more of kind of a fun thing. So there were 17,000 pieces of mail on board, over 17,000. Most were completely burned, like they never found anything.
Which there could be some important things.
That's right, there could have been. And only 360 pieces, roughly, were salvaged and able to be delivered. And some had been in a protected container. I think it was about 160 of them. And what was very interesting about that is those pieces of mail now are worth a lot of money, especially if they've got singed edges or charred edges.
Yeah.
And I think the other piece of the outcome is, what do you think happened to airships and luxury airship passenger travel?
They stopped it.
That's right. It was pretty much over at that point. I think between the media coverage and the terrifying information about how many people had been killed, how many people were burned, it was over.
Yeah.
So,
and there's actually footage from, I think it's the footage that is in the comments or the description.
we'll put a link in there so people can see it.
So you can see, or I think you can see it, but there is a person. There's like two crew members, or they're like two like captains or something, and they're going out of the piloting thing, and when it was on the ground in the kitchen, there was one of the kitchen staff, I think, and they opened something that led out to the thing, and they got out, and the chef was behind them, and he saw him get out, so he went behind him, and they both got out.
Oh, thank God.
And you can see the chef in the video.
Mm-hmm. That's amazing.
I think.
Well, so there's one other theory that has persisted that we have not talked about, and that was sabotage. Do you know what sabotage means? Mm-hmm. What does it mean?
Like you're, like sabotaging, like
you try to like ruin something, right?
Yeah.
You try to stop something from happening or destroy something on purpose. So there was a theory that because this was a Nazi ship, essentially, or a ship that had been used by the Nazis for propaganda, that there were other people who were against the Nazis who had decided to sabotage the ship. Now, they never found evidence of that.
Yeah, like the Nazis said that they never found that people, like, if anyone bombed.
That's right, exactly, because we've seen that before. So we're going to go with the prevailing theory, that it was probably the static electricity caused a spark that ignited the hydrogen.
Yeah.
Well, this has been fascinating, Albert. Mm-hmm. I wanted to thank you for doing this. And also, I think it's important that we tell people that if they've got ideas for future episodes, they should email those to us.
Yeah, and if you like it, you can rate it in the comments.
That's right. If you like it, rate us, follow us, and leave a nice review or a comment behind.
Yeah.
Thanks so much.
You're welcome. This is Curious World History.